Welcome to another episode of the People Over Perks podcast by Leapsome. In each episode, we speak with a people operations leader about how they're building a high-performance culture in their company. In today's episode, we speak with Vanessa Stock, the co-founder and VP People at Pitch. We speak with Vanessa about her career path en route to co-founding Pitch, how she's shaping her team to help Pitch scale, and how she's creating a people-centric organisation. Hope you enjoy this conversation. Okay, Vanessa, thank you so much for joining us on the People Over Perks podcast today.
Hi, good to see you. Great
Cool.
to be here.
I'm really excited about this conversation. We at Leapsome are users of Pitch, and so really looking forward to hearing all about your story as to how Pitch was founded, the HR team at Pitch, and some of the things that you're working on. So to kick off, I think it'd be really interesting to hear from you about the founding story. I believe there was a sort of a long history in terms of your co-founders working together at a previous company called Wunderlist. Maybe you could start there, please.
We are 8 co-founders. All of us worked at Wunderlist, and parts of the group were already founders there. And all of us, we basically know each other for 10 years, worked together for most of the time, and just had a really strong connection as humans, and really just respected each other's work. And after the acquisition of Wunderlist, everyone did like their own stuff. Some people stayed at Microsoft. Some people like me went into the startup world in Berlin and met a lot of people. And after a few years, we got together and said, hey, let's do something again. And for me, it was a no-brainer because I think from all the people I worked with, I think we had the best just human values and like similar ideas of how to build a great company, or what we consider a great product, or what we consider a healthy work environment, and all these things. So when we got together, I didn't really think about it too long. So it was really good.
Really cool. And can you give the audience an overview as to what Pitch is as a product as well?
Yeah, sure. So we basically started Pitch now 3.5 years ago, and we are building a competitor to Keynote and PowerPoint. Basically, it's a new generation of presentation tool that basically focuses on collaborating, rethinking the whole way of like building up the deck or a presentation, and also sharing it and consuming it and adding live data and all these things. We really feel like that this whole market has been somewhat stuck in the 90s. There were not many companies at that time really tackling that space in a way where we felt like, it's really solving these issues. And so we basically focus on really building a product in which like non-designers can build a beautiful deck without worrying too much around like, where's this format going and how do I do this and that. And that's the focus. We are now 120 people already, sitting across the country and Europe and the world. And we launched 7 months ago. So I hope most of you who listen have tried it at least once.
Yeah, very cool. That's a very cool story. And I'd love to dive into your role specifically, because you're the VP People. And obviously, I think it's fair to say that it's somewhat unusual to have a VP People as a co-founder. And so perhaps you could tell us what your role looked like in the very early days of Pitch, and then obviously how that's evolved over time, and what your role looks like now.
I think HR, there's never a too early stage to have HR in the team. I think it's very important to have a strong HR leader in the team very early on to really think about things. So I think I hope that in the future people don't say it's unusual to have a HR co-founder. I think it's actually the right way to really change work environments and really build innovative companies and healthy, or create healthy work environments for people. For me, obviously, being part of a team very early on, we were 8 and we were 10, we were 25. I mean, I was basically by myself until we were 60 people. So I was hiring everyone until we were 60. And now the people team finally also is growing. We have wonderful people in the team that help with talent acquisition and onboarding and all these things. But the good thing is, if you have someone owning this very early on and also being experienced, you really don't do like typical mistakes people would do that usually see hiring as a side thing, or onboarding experiences, or employee retention and all these things. And I think having a HR co-founder also just sends a strong signal, I would say, to the team and the future team that we really pay a lot of attention to like work environment and people, and don't see it as an afterthought, which is usually the case in a lot of companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. And so did I hear you say that you then hired the first person onto your team when you were 60 people?
Yeah. That's when we had a recruiter joining us, and then HR admin and everyone else joined along the way. Yeah, but until then I was doing it myself the whole time.
And what does the structure of your team look like now then?
So we have 2 people doing talent acquisition, 1 person doing employee experience, 1 person is going to join and do an own learning and development. And the talent acquisition team is going to grow throughout the next year. Like every quarter, we're going to add more recruiters, because we're going to double the team, I think, again in the next few months.
Oh, wow. Interesting. And I imagine that that recruiting has been perhaps helped, let's say, by the level of investors and PR that Pitch has received. Would you say that that's fair to say?
I think we already had a very strong employer brand before, like recent announcements. I think we already had like really a lot of amazing people really applying without us making a lot of noise. I think it's also related to the past success of the team and people already trusting the founders and knowing the quality standard and all that. So that was definitely helpful. And the new round and the new investors obviously are not bad, and definitely a good help now moving forward, hiring more people, especially C-level and all the experienced leader that we are about to hire.
Excellent. And Pitch is a fully remote company, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what you define as fully remote. We have an office in Berlin, but we have more than half of the team not being based in Berlin.
Interesting. And so how have you thought about that then? Was that a decision that was made right at the start, or was that influenced by COVID? Or perhaps you could walk us through that process as to how you thought about the choices and the trade-offs for being a remote team.
Yeah, I think it was basically dictated by the talent we wanted to hire. So when we started Pitch, we were in Berlin, we had an office. I think we were not married to the idea to have everyone in the office, but like after we hired 1 or 2 people that we really wanted to get on board and they just didn't want to move to Berlin, we were like, okay, then stay where you are and let's just work together. And those were like really experienced remote workers and taught us so much around remote culture, how to communicate, how to document, and how to really set the ground for like a healthy and productive remote culture. So that was basically part of our DNA then very early on. And so we grew into this along the way. So when COVID hit us, it wasn't like a big change. I think for the Berlin people who never worked remote before, I think for them it was obviously a change, but as a company, process-wise, and for the other half, it was like as usual, basically.
I guess that must have helped then, obviously keep things pretty smooth throughout that time.
Yeah, and I think when you as a company want to think about remote work, really make sure you hire experienced people, because they can always teach you also things and are really mindful about what are the community, the communication rules and what rituals and habits to establish. And I think if you would do this just with juniors, I think it wouldn't work. And I also think you couldn't train juniors really well if you would be like distributed, having different time zones and everything. So I think it boils down to like the workforce you have, whether it's going to work or not, I think.
That makes a lot of sense. And maybe you could dive into some of those habits and rituals then. Is there anything that you think has really helped Pitch remain a productive company being remote?
It's probably a mix of things, I would say. I think we had always the rule that when we have meetings with more people, that everyone dials into their laptop, even though they are in the office. So everyone is equal on screen and doesn't have these like side conversations in a meeting room. And this is something we always did. And we have like coffee meetups. People kind of rotate every week to meet other people. I think in terms of being productive, what helped us was we use Notion basically for everything. So everything that's company related and everything that's been written is stored in Notion, and everyone who joins can basically really follow through the history of things. And we've been really determined from day one to really document decisions, document product roadmap, document anything that's related to the company in Notion and make it accessible for everyone. And I think that really helped us to make sure everyone who joins finds the information they need, and they don't need to ask 15 people to get the info they want. And having like a transparent culture in which like channels are open, people can contribute to whatever topic they hear or see, and really making sure you live a transparent open door policy remotely, obviously.
Interesting. And you mentioned that you're obviously going to double the team size potentially over the next year. What are some of the other topics that are on your mind for the people team?
Yeah, I mean, with growing the workforce, I mean, we doubled the team every year. I don't think we will finish this year with double the amount, but like going somewhat into the direction of 180, and then next year we'll continue with that pace, I think, to some degree. And I think with that growth always comes a lot of challenges that are people related, right? It's about how do you orchestrate everyone? How do you make sure people know what they are supposed to do? How do you make sure they know who to talk to and where the communication flows, making sure there are good guidelines in place to really support this growth, right? Because you can't just add people and think it's going to work. You as a leadership team need to really have strong methods and conscious provide conscious guidelines, right, to help everyone grow and own their work, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in terms of processes for making sure that everybody has the feedback that they need, could you maybe talk about some of the things that you as a people team help facilitate? So whether that might be installing one-on-one meetings between managers and reports, performance reviews, things like that.
Yeah, I think we are another good example for that, because we actually don't do much of this. I mean, we have normal 101 routine for everyone, and we have a career framework, but we didn't want to introduce this performance culture where we have regular performance reviews that are kind of centralized in a tool, and everyone puts in their thoughts. We really want to make sure that people talk to each other immediately. So when I have a problem, that I go to this person immediately and try to resolve it, and not like write it down and then tell the person 6 months later when they can't act on it. I'm a fan of immediate feedback. I'm a fan of like really helping people to find their voice immediately and establish like a good relationship to their manager or to their team without necessarily having this yearly or bi-yearly performance review. I think maybe one day we will need it. So far, we made the conscious decision to not have that in place like that. I mean, there are, as I said, regular 101s where people can address their growing topics and also address how they want to develop, and we see how we can bring people there. But we don't do this like review where we say, okay, this is bad, you have to change this. We do this more in a dialogue on a regular basis, basically.
Yeah, that sort of speed of feedback is obviously is critical, isn't it, to make sure that everybody has the information that they need at the right time, rather than waiting for a performance review.
Yeah, and it's also kind of like, proven that like feedback is only effective when it's given immediately. So the brain makes this connection to the situation. If you write down, oh, 6 months ago you've done this in that meeting, and then it's obviously so far away that you can't really attach this to any learning. Yeah. So I think immediate feedback and constant conversations is probably more the mentality I would support. But I guess when you're like 400 people, you probably don't speak so openly anymore to each other. I don't know. But I hope we can grow as much as we can with that mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a people and culture team, then what are the other processes that you're helping to facilitate to help the company create a high performance culture?
I think in the end, I wouldn't say that it's the people and culture team driving these things. I think what's very important at Pitch is that everyone from various teams can drive initiatives and put stuff forward. It's not just like this silo that's doing everything that's related to this, or like tech is just doing tech. But like, I think we have a lot of remotees, and some of them have ideas, and then we have work groups that think about remote work and how we can improve things. I think it's a shared effort to make this culture right, and not just what the people team thinks is right, but really involving the team and how we do things and how we should change things and really get them involved. I don't believe in these like detached people teams that just come in and try to come up with processes that somehow are super disturbing to the team and don't make sense. So I think I prefer to do this with the team, and to really, as a people team, you can be like a facilitator, you can pick up these topics and make sure they are like getting the right attention and that they get like done. But I don't think the people team should necessarily decide all these things, because it's the team that needs to work with these things. So I think they should definitely be involved in finding the right way.
Yeah, and so you mentioned there that you have these work groups set up. Can you tell us a bit more about those and how you structure that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it sounds like as if there's like a super crazy approach behind it. I mean, we just have like topics that come up, and then we look for people that are having an interest or like background in it and want to put things forward. And then we say, okay, so remote work, what does that mean? What are the processes we should consider in the future? What are the things we need to consider? And then people from different parts of the team, different departments, different backgrounds can just join and be impactful also on different levels, and not just their daily work.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that they feel like they are creating also their work environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And so so thinking about the rest of the year ahead, then what are some of the key initiatives that you and your team specifically are working on towards?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one is still growing the team. It's been always like the biggest focus. Obviously, making sure people arrive well and like that the onboarding flow is top notch. And now that we have so many people, we are now in our 4th year of company existence to really think about career development. As I said, we hired a lovely learning and development specialist, and now thinking really about growth, about leadership development, to make like practices more explicit and to just grow a strong culture, which has been working out naturally so far. But now, since we're scaling, we really need to manifest this culture that we want to protect and help that when people join, that they really know how they should lead people or what's expected of them, or how can I be an impactful IC. As an IC, you can also be a leader. You don't have to be a manager to be a leader, and all these things,
Yeah, interesting. Cool, very cool. Thanks for sharing all of that. And I'd love to jump back to your career history specifically. So if I'm not mistaken, am I right in saying that before you worked at Wunderlist, you were working in a kind of different career path, and then you took a change into HR? Maybe you could tell us about that journey.
Yeah, my background or my start of my career was in PR and comms. I studied that and then worked in an agency in London for a few years, and before that in Hamburg. And I think what I just felt like always is I didn't really like the work environments, the traditional ones that were existent up until then. And I really always questioned how teams are run and organizations built. And I didn't like this hierarchical mindset where the boss kind of does less and less work, earns more and more money, and then all the other people do all the work and they stay late. I don't know. It's just like this weird dynamic that like really old businesses still exist. And I was just challenging this organizational style, how work has been distributed there and what dynamics have been existing. And I basically studied business psychology and organizational psychology and wanted to really think about how can you create an environment in which everyone feels like they own something, they contribute, and that they're somewhat equal, and that there's not this like fixation onto a boss or like just C-level. And so I studied that and wrote my master thesis around self-organizing teams. And so that's why I landed in the startup world, because that's basically where you can play around with these topics a lot without going through too much politics, like as in bigger companies.
That's a really interesting change. And when you then started in HR, were there any particular challenges that you felt like you had to personally navigate through, and sort of like things that you had to unlearn from your previous experiences?
Not really. I think I was just naturally curious. I think what's kind of interesting is just, especially when you're new to it, I think you observe so much around culture and like how leaders behave and what impact it has on the employees, what kind of unwritten culture people set in the way how they treat others and things like that. And I think for me, it was a little bit in the beginning when you are still a bit younger. I was always like, couldn't understand why people don't see these things, and if you raise them, why they're not changing it. And I think it's a tough job in HR to try to do the right thing and try to be supportive to the team and being also like a strategic advisor to the leadership team, but also realizing you're not always getting heard, depending on the culture or the company. And you need to really just find your right niche and find your right leader that you work with, where you feel like, okay, we can really do something great together. I think if you are on a human level and values level so far apart, I think it's difficult to work with like a CEO or like a leader that's like having much different human values, because I couldn't support that. And I think that we would just probably every day just discuss why this is not how you do it, or why you shouldn't treat people like this, or whatever. So I think for me in the beginning, it was just a little bit interesting to understand, okay, just because I would see these things are happening and I know they are not good, doesn't mean anyone would change them. It's a process and take a lot of conversations and a lot of time also for the organization to learn and to grow.
And then in that time period then between joining Wunderlist and starting Pitch, can you walk us through that time phase and some of the learnings that you picked up along the way that you're now implementing at Pitch?
I was doing like some HR consultancy. I worked at Clue for a few years, 2 years in an HR director role. I think at Clue I learned also a lot of stuff, also from myself. I think it was the first time I was in a leadership role. Everything was new. And it was like an interesting company in many ways, just because they're very creative and very different how they did things. And it was like a very interesting stretch coming from a purely tech driven company to like a more female health environment where everyone feels like a community or like a political statement team. And it was super interesting. I think I learned so much, met a lot of lovely people. I don't know. I think what I took away from that time is that I think it's interesting how different organizations are depending on the founders and what tone you're setting as a founder. And I think when you have like these conservative fintech startups, how they function, but then you have like Clue was super like led by these inspiring hippies in a way. No, I wouldn't say so, but like just very creative in how different the company was, and they almost created more of a hype. And everyone who joined was like really into this hype, and I think it was kind of interesting to see how different then the work life gets. If it's healthier, I don't know, but I think it was just very interesting how different teams are working and how different the structure is affected by the type of team you're building, basically. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And so obviously with your personal journey, you've gone from a slightly different career path, transitioned into HR, and then into like the senior level roles, and obviously now a co-founder. Do you have any sort of nuggets of wisdom in terms of career advice? Have you kind of come up with any frameworks or ways to think about your own development as you've progressed through your career?
I think first, as an agile leader, you really need to stay true to yourself and what you want to stand behind. I mean, you're obviously having a company to grow and to employ people. You have a lot of responsibility to these people. And I think as an agile leader, you just need to have a strong like core and really make sure you're like acting on those, and also just be very mindful on your communication when you also work with your leadership team that maybe has different opinions, or your team, and just being like really, I think it's also sometimes hard to detach yourself from your emotions or what you think is right, but always still, even though you're in a business, you're still promoting values as humans, and I think you should just stay strong behind those and not let yourself, I don't know, get carried away by an opportunity if you think this is not yours and not right. And I think I was always following my gut and my intuition, if this is now really what I want to do, and if this is really like a healthy environment in which people can really live good lives, but also have a great career. And I was always quite skeptical with a lot of companies that I was speaking to in the past, and I didn't join in the end. So I think as an HR leader, I think you just need to develop a strong core as a human, and ask yourself what you want to achieve. And for me, it was always like really building a great organization in which people really just love doing what they're doing and feeling like they can still live their normal life. They can work when they want and how they want. Some people have families, some people don't, and everyone has a different routine, and this is fine. And that you really create an environment where everyone feels like they can be their best self, truly.
Yeah, and so it sounds like you're kind of saying that you really need to have your strong personal values, and ideally find a company where there's a good match with the company values as well.
Exactly. And then you can create amazing things as an HR leader if you follow your intuition on these things.
Yeah, interesting.
And I think in the end, as an HR leader, I think we should always like really strive for building people-centric organizations and really putting again the human much more into the center and not revenues and all that. I know this is kind of a like conservative, controversial statement, but I think as an HR leader, I think you can create a winning business and still be good to your people and still build a people-centric organization. It shouldn't be either or. And
do you have any sort of tangible examples of how an HR leader could try and do that within their organization?
I mean, you need to challenge the leaders. You need to challenge other stakeholders that make decisions, the CFO that wants to save money, or the whatever role, I'm just making rules up, whoever decides how much people should work, or people giving out like these or making these like last minute changes at 9 p.m. and like people burn out. And I think it's a systemic thing, and you need to really like be in good contact with the leaders and the leadership to really make sure why are we doing this, what is this leading us to, and to be really like also good at challenging, really, like you have to have sometimes disagreements and but be fine with them.
Interesting. And what do you see as the role of HR and people ops going forward? Are there some particular trends that are particularly exciting you at the moment?
I mean, there are lots of trends. I know there's a lot around AI. I'm still very skeptical. I don't want to be like like the granny that's against tech. I'm definitely not, but I'm just challenging how good AI can really replace this human interaction of like a personal hiring process or like really talking to people. And I think, I mean, there's this AI trend. I'm not that excited about it. I think it's a relevant discussion. And I think probably for some companies and some big corporations, probably a great advancement. I feel like when you're still like quite early and a small team and you're building this people-centric culture and organization, I don't see I don't see AI in that. But what I'm excited about is obviously this whole remote distributed work topic, all these future of work topics, 4-day work week, all these things creating like a different work life for everyone. I think I'm very passionate about, and I love the idea that people can basically choose where they live and don't need to live where they work. And I think that's something I'm excited about, that really like a lot of companies that were super conservative are now really looking into staying remote. And I think this will change our whole life and realities. And I think that's great. So that's definitely something I'm excited about. And obviously then also all the great software that comes out that supports this, like Pitch, that helps remote teams to stay connected and do great work. And I think that's something I'm really excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. And throughout this conversation, you've talked about building a people-centric organization, creating a great culture where people can do great work and also have their normal life as well. I'm interested as to whether you have a particular way that you for yourself would measure your success in your role, and whether you could kind of boil down what you see your role as VP of People being within the organization into like a short sentence or two.
Okay, so there were two questions, weren't they, in this question?
Yeah. So how do you measure success for yourself as the VP of People?
I mean, first, obviously, what type of people do we hire? Do they stay? Do they leave? And we had very, very fortunate the first 3 years that actually everyone we hired stayed. I mean, now after 3 years, we had a few people leaving, starting their own business, or like just wanting a break, but not because they went to another company. So I think that already shows we hire really well and find the right people for the right opportunities. And then obviously, when you're really well in touch with your team and in dialogue, you can always like, obviously you hear how things are going, if people are happy or frustrated, and really stay connected to what the voices are, I think is important. And I think there, if your team, your people team, your founding team, your leadership team is doing a good job. Yeah. And as I said, I don't think all these culture topics are like HR. I think culture is everything, is everyone, is like, it's the leadership team. It's like the way how everyone communicates and who gets promoted or whatever. And it's not just HR basically carrying all this. And I think I would consider it a success that everyone at Pitch is, I think, very invested and contributing to this environment and helping us shaping this, basically.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you. And so just a couple of quick fire questions to finish off. Are there any particularly interesting trainings that you've taken throughout your career that you think have been really impactful for your own development?
I think I really like one-on-one coaching with like a coach, and you can really dive deep into like topics that are in your head or maybe you are not even aware of, and you get really like support on solving challenges and stuff like that. I think I have more just that you meet people and you have a great conversation and it sticks to you, or they say interesting things and then you kind of change the way you think. And I think for me, it was a mix of these things, I would say. Just meeting interesting people that I felt had great stuff to talk about, or reading some books, or having like here and there some leadership coaching, but like one-on-one coaching was very helpful. I wouldn't say there's this one training you have to do and this will solve all the question marks, but I think you need to hang out with really cool people that you think have a great message, and you can take away your own from that, and also evolve as a leader or as a HR professional or as an individual.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And you mentioned books, and that was going to be my last question. Do you have any particularly strong book recommendations for our audience?
I'm just thinking about it. It's always like a difficult question to answer when you it's always hard to say there's just one book that was like mind-blowing. I think there's none. I would say this is like the truth or the Holy Bible, but I guess I think every manager or HR professional should read this book around the 5 dysfunctions of team. Team. I think that's very important when you think about cultures, team structures, and all these things. And then I also found the book Reinventing Organizations pretty good. It's about basically different organizational concepts and how you can create meaning in a work life through different ways than just adding hierarchies and all these things. I think those 2 books I really liked in my career that kind of made me think a bit different.
Yeah, you're not the first person to recommend the 5 dysfunctions of a team. So it's clearly a favorite amongst our audiences.
I should say another one, but I can't think of one. No.
No problem. Well, Vanessa, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a fascinating conversation. We'll be sure to link to all of your recommendations in the show notes. Thanks again for joining us. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I hope there was some interesting stuff for you coming out, or for the listeners.
Absolutely. Thanks again. Thanks for listening to this episode of People Over Perks by Leapsome. We're available on the Leapsome YouTube channel and all major podcasting platforms, so you can hit subscribe to receive each episode as it's released. We also have an email newsletter and a Slack community where you'll find great resources and discussions on how to build a high-performing, humane and diverse company culture. You can find the link in the show notes, or you can head to the resources section at leapsome.com. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time.